This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
The worst crisis and danger facing our children today. That's our topic this week, straight ahead on A View from the Bunker. You have blessed us with your support during our first year in ministry. You literally make it possible for us to do what we do. And so as we prepare to head into a new year, we want to return the blessing to you. Through January, we've prepared a number of special offers at the Gilbert House store, and we're featuring the Red Wing Saga, Sharon's wonderful series of supernatural thrillers that teaches spiritual warfare through masterful storytelling with fascinating historical mysteries as the backdrop. Now, all 8 novels in the Red Wing Saga, a $160 value, can be yours for just $110, a savings of $50. You'll also find the Derek Gilbert collection, all 5 of my nonfiction books, a $100 value for just $70. Those are just 2 of the special offers available through January at our online store. You'll find it at gilberthouse.org/store. And as always, we thank you for your prayers and your support. Sextortion. Worse than fentanyl.
Today's date is November the 12th, 2013. The time now is approximately 7:28 in the morning. Investigator R.D. Vice President is Detective Joe Phillips with Virginia Beach Police.
Do you remember that time period?
Yes.
Can you start to tell the jury what happened?
I had, a friend request from this Steve Crofton guy.
Prior to that date, had you ever had contact with a Steve Crofton?
No.
For the first time in history, we're letting strangers interact with our kids in the back of our car, in their bedrooms, in their homes.
That online environment has just created this access to children that was never there before.
Physiologically, they don't understand who is out there and what people are capable of.
It's been called a new form of sexual assault, online sextortion.
For HSI, the increase that we've seen is definitely sextortion.
Sextortion is probably the fastest growing crime in the world.
That's right, sextortion attempts are skyrocketing.
We see cases come in for children as young as 8 years old, 9 years old. We're talking elementary school children.
As a predator, you can actually create an online profile that matches the preferences of that child.
He got information from our chats through my computer, information about my mom, about my sister. He had Google images of my home.
From 16 years ago to today, there is no mold. Anybody from any walk of life could be involved in this. We've had doctors and police and clergy.
Simply the fact of who the offender was very shocking in this case.
We intercepted a letter he wrote to the Chinese embassy in Washington. If they would break him out, he would give them all the information on the F-18.
When you talk to me, please don't lie to me. You're a grown man, you're an officer in the Navy.
These grown men are going after these young girls, and they try to kill them. Might not be in their intention, but they're killing them. And we have to stop it.
I would literally do anything to save one. There's so many kids out there that need saving that there's just not enough of us to do it.
Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. If you would, just allow me to take a moment to welcome you to 2023. Please take a moment when you get an opportunity to download our app. It is free, available for iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire phones and tablets. Also, set-top boxes, Roku and Apple TV, brings all of our content right to you and bypasses the gatekeepers of big tech. And the reason I suggest that is the topic this week is one that cost Skywatch TV its YouTube channel several years ago. Not this specific film or this specific guest, but the subject of sex trafficking, and specifically for the purposes of supernatural evil. But when you get right down to it, that's what this is all about. Our guest this week, we met back 7 years ago now, actually, when she came out to the Ozarks to visit us at Skywatch TV. She is president and CEO of a ministry called Million Kids, online at millionkids.org. And she's been warning parents, grandparents, church groups, schools, anyone who will listen about the danger to our children posed by the unprecedented access that groomers and pedophiles have through current technology. I'm 61 years old, and pretty tech savvy, but she startled us several years ago when she told us about social media sites that groomers and pedophiles were using to access children that I'd never heard of. And it will be an eye-opening conversation. Since we last spoke, she has raised the funds for the production of a new film that is eye-opening and would be very important for you to see. It is available online. The title is, of course, Sextortion, The Hidden Pandemic. It's online at sextortionfilm.com. She's the author of two important books, Seduce the Grooming of America's Teenagers and Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. It's an honor to welcome to the program the president, CEO of Million Kids, Opal Singleton. Opal, it's good to see you again. It's been too long since we've spoken. For people who may not have seen those programs on Skywatch TV or the other discussions that we had that were made public back in 2015, before we get into the discussion of the film, the documentary, what is Million Kids?
Million Kids is a small but mighty organization. We've been in business 15 years now. Ended up training more than 500,000 people. I quit counting after that. Who cares? But we have a couple of books, a movie, as you know, coming out. But by trade, we're a law enforcement trainer for human trafficking and sextortion. But we also train a lot of your faith-based communities and a lot of your schools. I've done a lot of work in schools because of what is happening online and social media exploitation. So we're an organization that really is all about keeping kids safe from predators, whatever it takes. And that's kind of the bottom line for us.
What inspired the name of the organization, Million Kids?
Actually, my pastor did the organization. He started it and signed it over to me. Million Kids is because more than 1 million kids are trafficked each year throughout the world. And we actually started working with Cambodia and the organization, RAFA organization, that I was on the board for 10 years there. But then I met the Riverside County Sheriff in 2010, the department that was starting the Human Trafficking Task Force, and they asked us to be their training and outreach coordinators. So we used that nonprofit used for Cambodia to do the work in the U.S., and it has just exploded ever since over the last 12 years. And we sat with parents who are missing a child or whose child is being blackmailed or in trouble. And we sat with kids who are runaway or kids who are being trafficked. And so it's a tough business, but it's an important business.
I think a lot of parents, and you know, I'm at an age now where our daughter is in her early 30s, so social media was not really a thing when she was coming up. I don't know that parents, even younger folks who are my daughter's age, who may be having children of their own now, really understand how insidious and how omnipresent social media really is. What is the danger to kids, and how serious is this here in the United States?
Yeah. Let me first say there's an upside to this and a downside. And to be fair on the upside, I've written a book called Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. And if you think about this, Derek, this is the first generation in the entire history of the world where the entire world is being brought together. Well, maybe the Tower of Babel, okay?
Yeah.
But this is the first time that the entire world is connected. And it isn't just the fact that we're all connected, but the technology is so much more advanced. So, like, I'm old enough to remember MySpace, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm still on Facebook, and so is Million Kids. But our kids will be on things like TikTok, where they go on and they make a video, and it doesn't just go out to 60 people they know. They might have 5 million followers, and they're going to have relationships with millions of people they don't know. And I had a mother tell me, well, my daughter has 8 million followers. And I'm like, okay, out of 1 million, what percentage might be a pedophile? What if it's 1%? Is your 11-year-old daughter, she was 11, able to stand against 10,000 pedophiles that can reach her and will look like the Hollywood's greatest agent that will make her famous. And so that is the challenge of this generation. I always say technology isn't good or bad. It's like a car. You can take it to university and get a degree, or you can take it to a strip club and get yourself in trouble. It is about that conversation. It is preparing your child to make good and healthy and godlike decisions. And that's really the challenge for the Christian parent today. Now, the downside of that is the fact that so many people can reach them, and they are really slick operators, and they don't know how to, our kids are unable to tell which ones are the good guys and which ones are the bad guys. And that's the importance here. I share with kids, you can raise funds for a well in Kenya, and you can live stream over and talk to those kids in Kenya as they dig your well, and use technology for the glory of God. Or you can go online in one of those video games or hook up with some stranger, and they start seducing you, and you think you have a new best friend. And the next thing you know, you're sending off one of those erotic videos, and your life will change forever. And that's really the danger of what is happening. To share with you how big this is, last year, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children took 29.3 million reports of potential online child exploitation. That is 80,000 a day, Derek. 80,000 reports a day. This is bigger than fentanyl. It's bigger than all the other stuff out there. And it's getting more and more sophisticated. In the beginning, it was like individual pedophiles. And we'll talk about my film in a minute, but that film covers that. But then the pedophiles got together and formed rings, and they had thousands of victims that are kids that think they're in a relationship. They send that photo, and the blackmail begins. In those cases, they usually want more photos, or else they're going to destroy you. So the kid really gets compromised. My apologies here. Anyway, the kid really gets compromised, okay? And recently, the FBI and Homeland Security have announced that these third world countries are using their very poor kids and setting them up in telemarketing centers and seducing our kids. And they're focused on males. Usually it's girls. They want the sex photo and like that. This one, they're focusing on males. And it looks like a 14-year-old girl who's hot. And they get tricked in to either they're using live streaming and they forget that goes both ways, or they'll send a photo and they start demanding money, and they are absolutely ruthless. And we're seeing young people take their lives. Suicide rates are rising. That's why FBI and Homeland Security just did this announcement, because in that case, it's a lot of young males. So.
This is startling, because I think most parents who have even heard the term sextortion would assume that it targets young women. But this is, as you say, this is not only going after young men, it's being organized to the point where you've got phone banks of kids in third world countries now who are being paid to try to lure young men into this kind of scandal.
Yeah, they said NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, last month said that 76% of the blackmail calls or the blackmail cases are involving money, and they're just really ruthless. I'll take you back to my film a minute, and then we can kind of progress on that. But as I watched this starting to happen, like 2016, when you and I were first getting acquainted, and then it's progressed over, I wanted to make a movie, because I've always thought we're putting our kids on the World Wide Web without defining what that is and where naked photos go when you hit send. And I've always thought, if I could show kids that their photo, if you're talking to the wrong guy, a pedophile, and he's part of a large-scale child pornography ring, your photo could go to 1 million people just like that. This began, I'll kind of give you the evolution of this. As kids got on, they would have an individual pedophile, and he would keep their photo. He might blackmail them with it. And sextortion means sex and extortion together, blackmail. And so that they would, be violated by an individual. But pretty soon, especially during COVID, pedophiles were alone also at home with a lot of time on their hands. And pedophiles, if it's a world without borders for our kids, it's a world without borders for pedophiles and gangs and cartels. And they would find each other and they would go in the dark web and they would join large-scale child pornography rings. So what happened is initially pedophiles would be by themselves and they would just have their own pleasure of violating a child. But then they began to find each other online and they would join a dark web account. And these became very large. 2 years ago, the FBI found the Welcome to Video child pornography ring. It had 1 million paid subscribers using Bitcoin. They were paying, it was generating over $400 million a year. I mean, this is huge business. And our kids would get sucked into this. They'd think it's some 15-year-old guy. They'd send that photo, and then they would just glob onto this poor kid, demand more photos. And it was about getting the photo, more photos, because they are being bought, sold, and traded in these child pornography rings. In fact, as the law enforcement began to penetrate those rings, they became a lot more demanding on you proving that you're not a cop when you belong to that particular ring. So they actually put in requirements that you had to come up with a new photo of you and a violated child every week.
Oh.
So think about this, Derek. If you have 1 million people in a child pornography ring that's having to come up with a new photo every week, it's escalating like crazy to blackmail our kids. Because normally, I don't think pedophiles would literally do that every week. But now they do to be able to prove they're not a cop. So as this progressed, what you would find is these kids would send a photo, and then suddenly you'd have thousands of people who want more photos. So I said, if I can convince my teenagers where that photo goes and that it can go to 1 million people just like that, they'll stop doing it. So I did this as my husband was passing away. It was the hardest thing I ever did, quite frankly. And I raised the money for a film, along with Giving University came in on with us. And we picked a producer. And it's been amazing how God has been with us in this particular movie. The producer, I didn't go to Hollywood because of COVID and the Screen Actors Guild. The producer was from Virginia. And in this particular case, he met his Sunday school teacher was a judge on a big case, the Daniel Harris case. And he said he gave them all 50,000 pages of documentation to create this movie. And at that point, we got introduced to Homeland Security, who handled that case. And they allowed this movie to be made inside of Homeland Security. And I could never have arranged this. It's all a gift from God. Anyway, as that developed, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children joined in. And the reason that's so important is my dream in making this movie was to get it in every school in America. But I'm like this big as an organization. How am I going to do that? But I stayed true and I raised the money and we have this movie and it came out. And NACMEC told me, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, told us we don't have a fall product for school. So if you'll raise more money and help us cut this into segments, we will put it in school under our federal contracts, which already exist.
Wow.
All across America. I'm like, holy cow, God, I don't believe this. Anyway, so it's been quite a journey. Anyway, the movie came out. It was actually in the Santa Barbara Film Festival, but we didn't win. And just last week, we were told that it is in the running for an Oscar. And I don't even let myself go there. But it is available, and every parent and every teenager ought to see this before they get a cell phone. They really, really should. And if they have a cell phone, sit down and share it together with your family. The film is called Sextortion, The Hidden Pandemic. And because it came out, it exploded during the normal pandemic. And you can go to sextortionfilm.com, sextortionfilm.com. You can see the trailer. I think you're going to put the trailer on. And it'll also tell you all the places. I know it's Amazon, iTunes, Apple, Vimeo. There's a bunch of them that you can get it at. And I want every parent in America to see this one, especially the parent.
This, you say, exploded during the pandemic. It became worse because kids were stuck at home and often without parental supervision.
Right.
And with the 24/7 access to the internet that we now have through cell phones, I think we discussed this back in 2016 when when you came out here to the Ozarks, that used to be that dad controlled access to, when I was a kid. You know, we had 3 network channels plus PBS growing up in Chicago. And when that was gone, that was it. You know, I'd get my little AM radio so I could listen to the Cubs games when they played out on the West Coast at night. But that was about it as far as access to the world. But now every kid over the age of 5, it seems, has a 24-hour-a-day connection to the internet. And I like the way you put it back then. Kids are drawn into these relationships because once they hit 13, 14 years old, they've got the hormones of an adult, but the frontal lobes of their brains have not yet developed.
That's the sad part. But, you know, that is also, I say it's the most interesting time in all of history to be, because of technology. But it's also an interesting time to be a parent, because it's one of those times when your child knows more than you do. Your kid is just naturally astute at all this, you know, and we're kind of running along going, you be careful on that thing now, you know, because we don't have a clue. And these pedophiles are smart because they move you from app to app to app. And parents are lucky if they can even figure out Facebook or Instagram, let alone TikTok and all the others. And that's one of the reasons they do that. And so it really is a time for parents to sit down with kids. And one of our mottos is, I believe in you. And I believe parents have to overcome their fear of technology and take a deliberate mission in being a parent. This is no time to just say, oh, they'll be okay. And sit down with your child and say, look, you know more than I do. But first of all, this is my phone because I pay for it. But I believe in you. I trust you. I think you have good judgment, or I wouldn't give it to you. And it's going to take good judgment. You know, you're going to get all kinds of offers, and they're going to look really, really good. And I'm believing that you're going to be able to make those judgments. But because it's my phone, I will check it from time to time. And if you're not showing good judgment, well, I'll bar it back till you're ready to have good judgment. But we're going to do this together. I am not going to be a parent who sits in the dark. I'm going to be engaged with whatever you have because it's my phone that I'm loaning to you. But I also want you to be a leader, because think about this, Derek. How we raise this generation of kids will set the stage for all future generations of kids who will live in a world without borders. And that's why I wrote that book, is I believe with all my heart, we're in a historic time, maybe the most important time in all of history. I wanted to add one more thing when you were talking about the 13, 14-year-old. During the pandemic, I see this thing where everybody that's 6, 7, 8 years old is getting a phone, 9 years old getting a phone. I want people to understand something. They're prepubescent. They don't know what a pedophile is because they don't know what adult sex is. And I'll say to a parent, they'll say, when should I give a child a phone? I said, well, have you had the adult sex talk? Well, no, I don't want to traumatize them. If they are too young for an adult sex talk, they are too young for a phone, because I kid. I'm just kidding. But I'm saying, if you're going to do that, take your little kid down to the strip club and leave them off for 10 minutes and see how they hold up. I'm kidding. Okay. But you are doing that by putting a 7-year-old online, because think about 7-year-olds. They love everybody and they want everybody to love them, and they're cute as heck. You know, and so some guy contacts them and shows them a video of 2 kids playing sex games with themselves or the family pet or something, you know, and they all giggle because that's bathroom humor. That's how we all are, okay? They don't understand why he's doing that, but they want her to or him to do it also. And they're giggling, and they do it themselves because they want to impress that guy with how good they are with technology. And they shoot that thing off, and it goes around the world just like that. And they never understand what happened to them. And we are doing this before they go through puberty, and it will change their image of themselves for the rest of their life. They will already have been dealing with shame, adult shame, before they ever get to understand that healthy kind of sexual relationship that God intended people to have.
You talked about the surge in suicide rates connected with the explosion of sextortion. What causes that? Is that related to this kind of shame?
Yes, it is. And it's a bit different, though. And thank you for bringing that in, because this is serious. I've been doing this since 2016, as far as the sexual shame and showing everybody at school your naked photos, and the kids get bullied and like that. And occasionally one of them will commit suicide or drug overdose or something. And I share with parents what to look for in that case. Just so you know, their eating will change, their sleeping will change. They quit going to school. They maybe shut down. They maybe start to run away, and then they'll come back and they start to cut. If they start to cut, get help immediately. But what we're seeing now is these overseas units are setting up these very large telemarketing centers. And they use their kids to trick our kids, and it's all about money. They have whiteboards, they have quotas, and and guess what? Our kids have Bitcoin because they play video games, and so they'll often get them to pay in Bitcoin, and they keep track. And they're kids over there, so they're sharp. They know how to talk to other kids, and they know how to use technology. The problem here is it becomes very hardcore. I need money, because they're being tracked by how much money they make. It's a unique phenomena that we're seeing of very smart kids. In the past, maybe kids were autistic or maybe not having various kinds of problems. These are kids who are football players, that are homecoming kings, that are very popular. They're straight A students, and everywhere from 18 to 13. And nobody knows this is happening. It happens very quickly. The normal behavior changes don't come in, but they'll hook up with what they think. And by the way, rural, I can't say that word, country kids, okay, are especially vulnerable because they're not as sophisticated as maybe what you might see in the city. But it'll look like somebody who really cares about them. They send that, and now they want a lot of money. And the kids panic, and they pound on them just mercilessly. And we're seeing a whole group of kids that kill themselves within 6 to 18 hours. And these are young males that show no indication they're in trouble before the parent can intervene. So we got to get out ahead of that. Derek, we really do. I always say, how do I fix this? And we have to get parents and kids to stop in their tracks. That's why Homeland Security and FBI released that, because they're getting ready to go on these holidays, and they're going to be alone again, going into summer vacation, same thing. And we've got to explain to kids, that isn't who you think. The minute you send any photo, I always say, never send a photo online you would not send to your grandmother, okay? The minute you send any questionable photo, they will be all over you, and your life will go to pieces in a hurry. But here's the thing. We're all on top of this now, and we're looking at it, and there is help. Do not kill yourself. Do not panic. Do not just think you're destroyed. Literally stop and ask for help. And parents and school counselors and school resource, when somebody comes to you and said, I screwed up, I sent a naked photo, do not look at them and go, what in the heck were you thinking? That will destroy that child. Stop and say, look, this is going to be tough, but I am with you. You are not alone. And we have to go to the police, but think about the power of that. Okay, you made a mistake. your life is in trouble. But if you go to the police with all that information, don't show it to other people, don't delete it, don't go on and say, I know you're a pedophile and leave my kid alone. Screenshot that, take that photo, and take your child and go to the police, because they have thousands of other victims that you can save from their agony if you're willing. First of all, I hope you never send that photo. Mm-hmm. But if you do, we're here to help you. We're losing our very finest kids, and they panic. They just panic.
Because you may have a high achiever who suddenly makes this one mistake, and this is so contrary to the image that they've created, the expectations that the parents have set for this child, and rather than deal with the shame that comes with it, they make a tragic decision.
Like they don't give it a lot of thought. They just panic.
Yeah.
Because there's not a change in a behavior that a parent can see. And some of these suicides that I've seen, the kids are just phenomenal. One was a straight A student in a justice program. She was 18. And the group that got her was out of Pakistan. And there's a whole lot of them coming out of the Ivory Coast and out of the Philippines. And, they're working overseas to start to take these down. But of course, this is a new phenomenon for them too. So we've got to get in front of this with our kids. I know this. Kids don't want to be violated, and they want to be leaders. It's up to us to give them the tools so they can be leaders.
For parents, then, number one is if they discover that their son or daughter has engaged in this behavior and is suddenly being threatened with exposure,
right?
Don't pile shame on top of shame.
Do not do this. Do not. I always tell a parent, if you think this is happening, if you see a change in behavior, sit down quietly. Now, I'm old-fashioned in my thinking. I think fathers should sit down with sons and mothers with daughters, if possible. And that's because one of the things I do is I sit with parents who have a kid in trouble, and a father cannot unsee what he's seen in a daughter, and it changes the family dynamics. Without being too blunt about it.
Sure.
So now oftentimes there's not a 2-parent household. I get that now, but sit down with them and just say, I see you dealing with something heavy. Can we talk? Is this something you can share? And if they can't, then you can say, I've been hearing about this thing with photos online. Don't go those photos, those sexual photos. Just say, I've been hearing about these things with photos online. Is it possible that's the situation here? See if they can respond. Just stay quiet for a bit. If not, you can end it with, I want you to know this. I believe in you. I'm here for you. I think that, if this should have happened with you, I want you to know it'll be hard. It'll be hard for you. It'll be hard for me. But I am here and you're not alone. And we will work through this together. And if it should happen, I want you to know that by being able to deal with it right, you can help other people that might be being trapped in this. So don't ever feel trapped. Number one, don't send that photo. But if you do, I'm right here for you. We're a team on this social media. I believe in you. We're going to share this.
We're going to direct people to the website for the film, sextortionfilm.com. That'll be a link in the show notes below this video or audio, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. But Opal, what other resources would you recommend for parents especially?
Actually, millionkids.org, not .com. That's a rock band, okay? Right. Millionkids.org. You won't like them. Anyway, millionkids.org has lots of resources. We have our own YouTube channel where we talk about all this. I do, the insider alerts. If anybody wants to sign up for that, they'll see the latest cases and we do analysis. As much as I'm not fond of Facebook, we do have a Facebook supporter group that you might want to join where I analyze cases on it. But millionkids.org, we have a lot of resources there because this is what we do day and night. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, Derek, sharing your opportunity with us, because this is, in my opinion, one of the greatest crises of all time. And you don't hear about it a lot on TV. We may be running out of time, but I just want to convey one local case that just happened. She was 14 years old right here in our town. And the police asked me if I'd join in as the referral agency on it for press. But she thought she was talking to a 17-year-old guy back east, and he wasn't. He was a 28-year-old, as he turned out, in law enforcement. Anyway, he drove across country and went in, and he viciously murdered her mother, her grandfather, and her grandma. Mm-hmm. And he kidnapped her. And fortunately, a neighbor had gotten a license plate. They tracked him out the desert. He took her 3 hours away. They got him by helicopter. He ended up taking his own life as SWAT showed up. And we don't, but that young girl's life has changed forever. And it all started by a nude photo to somebody she thought was 17. This is serious business, and we have to take it seriously. The good news is I know a multitude of young people who use technology for the glory of God and use it in ways to help others. And that's what we need to do.
Amen to that. This is something churches as a body need to take up and address with not just the youth group, but the parents whose kids are in the youth groups.
And the counseling services for them, because, this involves sexual shame that will form who you are for the rest of your life.
Right.
And it changes the family dynamics. The faith-based community, I'll tell you, should be all over this. There is such a need for them to come forward and take this on this is forever. Technology is never going to get simpler than it is today. And I believe this is the greatest mission we could ever be called to at this time, as the entire world is connected by internet. And while I'm at it, overseas missionaries need to be trained too. They seem to be the least technical. We got to get them into the 22nd century, 20th century, or wherever we're at. We got to get them up to date, okay? Because they're seeing it too.
Yeah, amen. The enemy targets the family unit because, as a wise pastor once said at a men's conference I attended years ago, the family is the smallest battle formation in this spiritual war. And when we're divided on the battlefield, the enemy has divided so that it can conquer. And that's exactly what is going on through sextortion and other practices, using the internet as a 24-hour access pipeline to our children and our grandchildren. Opal Singleton is the author of Seduce the Grooming of America's Teenagers and Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls, and also the one who raised the funds for the important new documentary Sextortion, The Hidden Pandemic. You'll find her online, millionkids.org. Opal, thank you for taking some of your time out to share with us today.
Appreciate you so much.
Check the show notes wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. If it's at YouTube, youtube.com/Gilbert House. Please subscribe, share that link around. If it's one of our audio locations through your favorite podcatcher, whether it's Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, please just check the show notes and you'll find links to millionkids.org, sextortionfilm.com, and other resources online to learn more about this scourge. And really, this is what this is. It's the enemy's attempt to destroy the family, because the family unit, if we stick together and protect one another, which is, as parents and grandparents, our job, biblically speaking, especially for us as fathers. This was a subject that we discussed with Vicki Joy Anderson, the author of They Only Come Out at Night, just a couple of months ago. If we are doing our job and standing between these predators and our children, then the enemy will fail in this attempt to drive a wedge between the members of the family as God intended. As I mentioned to Opal, just thinking years ago about my dad, who I'm about 4 inches taller than he was, maybe a little more than that even. And yet in my mind's eye, I'm still looking up to my father, who went home to be with the Lord back in 2005. No one got into our house or contacted my sister and me when we were young without Dad's permission. But now, thanks to cell phones, tablets, internet-connected devices, our kids have strangers in their bedrooms all night long. millionkids.org. Please follow us online and give us a like if you are listening at some place that allows you to so do, or perhaps leave us a review. Helps with the algorithms as they search us out. We've got plenty of things on the books for this year. Of course, our Israel tour coming up in just a couple of months. Maybe a few slots left. I'm recording this some weeks in advance, so I don't know where we stand. As of this recording, which is just before Christmas, we had only 15 slots left on the tour, but we do have dates for a 2024 tour that we will be revealing shortly. We've also got perhaps the tour in October of Turkey. We'll be talking about that as we get closer to those dates. We're just kind of keeping an eye on the political situation in Eastern Europe because a lot of this stuff is going on around the Black Sea, and Turkey also borders on the Black Sea. So we want to be sure that everything is safe as well as edifying. Skywatch TV's virtual conference continues yet for another month. You can still sign up to the Defender Conference Exposing the Darkness through February 4th. 90 days access to all of those. Of course, my presentation, Exposing the Valley of the Shadow of Death. It's a literal place, not just a metaphor. That is one of the 24 presentations, 24 presentations, plus 6 feature-length documentary films from Skywatch Films as an added bonus. Find out more online at defenderconference.com. A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, VFTB.net, all of our various social media sites. And until next time, remember, please, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.